I've got one.
Okay.
Oh, no, Harper. Okay.
I know Harper.
So, one thing that was kind of mentioned was like taking and controlling the line.
Yeah.
If you could boil that down to, okay, I've successfully advanced, I've successfully matched my opponent in a bind. What now?
What now?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Cool. What else? Are we struggling getting the bind? Do you feel?
I feel like I am a little bit right now.
Sometimes.
I feel like, I always pick 3 skills, deteriorate in 2 others, and right now the thing I suck at is gaining the sword.
Actually get. So like
Yeah.
you might think you have your sword in the right position,
And I
then
just
you,
don't.
You just
And I
don't.
just
You're just
don't.
getting plowed or something. Yeah. Good. Excellent. Harper, what was yours?
So I'm generally just working on being able to move forward with intent without losing constraint halfway through, because I get impatient and I'm like, I move forward and then I don't actually have the sword the whole way. And halfway through, I just lose it and
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Anything else? These are all good. These are all wonderful. Yeah.
Attacking in a non-linear approach. 'Cause
Like just not straight in.
Yeah.
What's happening?
I'll gain the sword and I'm just going straight forward.
Straightforward.
And that's just a recipe for getting stabbed or
So there's no
stabbed double.
defense in what.
Yeah.
Right. You're not really. Okay. Placing it good. Fantastic. Excellent. All of this fits into our meta discussion.
Yep.
Fantastic. Elsewise, anybody? I don't want to miss anything. Cool. Great. All right. So, fantastic. So this is what I want to do then is, over the last handful of years or so, I've been refining kind of some presentation on Italian rapier specifically, but this also applies directly to Spanish. And if anybody wants to take a side journey into German, you can also do that, but not contextual. I'll leave the German off for a while, but this. So it falls right into our kind of standard circle and triangle theories of gaining the sword, controlling the center, working in our opponent's tempo, but doing it in a slightly different mechanical fashion or from a different mechanical perspective that can help us see what's good, when what's true, and sometimes what's fooling us or what's false or what we think might be the right place but might not actually be the right place, right? So we'll start and then we'll build that into, we'll take that and then we'll build that into like what I use as my sort of core structural measure drills, so that we then make choices along each stage using these mechanics to drive the fight and being able to choose when and how we do that. Right? What we won't get into is the counter to everything I'm going to talk about today, but we'll save that for another
Next time.
Okay. First and foremost, do you want to be my demo partner, or do you want me to grab one? Okay. And it's going to be my demo partner. Is the lighting okay for the?
Yeah, he's good.
All right, you're going. Because we're going to talk. We're going to start this. We're going to start this talking about inside of the sword, which is often the most common starting areas. Most people don't generally actually start on the outside of your sword unless you're fighting an offhanded opponent, but all of this applies to the outside as well as inside. And I'm going to credit a little bit David Biggs, who, and this has got my brain going on a different look at Calafia when we did the Northern Italian Rapier class during the pandemic together. So, thanks, David. One of the things that he talked about is looking at Capoferro's structure. I know that a lot of us, you may have heard about the progressive lunge. We've talked about this, about extending and then moving the foot, right? So that we're growing that whole time, and we're saving our foot for last. We're not just flinging everything as fast as possible. What David was looking at is Capoferro's text, like instead of thinking about it in terms of a singular growth, there's a transition from gaining the sword to attacking that is basically a shifting of guard, right? So I'm not doing anything other than going from my my terza, where I'm gaining the sword, into quarta, where I'm attacking. And then I can move my foot, right? So if I can move from here, that's a good space for my body to be in. If I'm over my front foot, when I'm starting this action, I can't move that. It gets locked down. And so this is where we see, if you start this growing and you get too much onto your front foot, and then there's that lurch, right? To try to get off of it, and you end up with a big bump, or you just end up getting stuck, or your foot doesn't move. So the key element is, when we start that extension of the attack, we want to still be in guard in our lower half. So you want to still be fully mobile enough to move both your feet, even as you start the attack, right? So one thing I've been looking at is, okay, going from gaining the sword into guard and then attacking with the foot. Instead of trying to grow slowly and get out there and see how, like, now I end up in this kind of awkward dipped position, is just a single motion of guard, foot, back, right? And that's given me a lot more balance and control over when I move that foot. Okay? Do people want to get up and start doing this, or do you want me to talk and then we'll do stuff?
Keep going with that. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Got a good momentum going.
Yep.
The second element that I've put into this is, you've all probably heard about the cone of defense, right? Everybody's heard about the cone of defense. What does the cone of defense look like? Where's the cone of defense pointed? If it's a cone,
your
it's
opponent.
pointed at our opponent. In our hand, our point stays in the middle, and our hand goes to the outside. This is a wonderful concept about being defended while attacking. But this is not the cone of defense. This is the cone of offense. This is the cone we use when we're attacking our opponent. If we're actually trying to defend ourselves from their sword, as in gaining the sword, we have to be using the opposite cone. I cannot gain my opponent's sword without, I cannot gain my opponent's sword while pointing my sword at my opponent. I can be in counter posture, I could be in an attack in the cone of offense, but if I'm trying to gain my opponent's sword with my point at them, I'm going to end up in a position where my point is near their hilt, or I'm going to be chasing with my hilt to try to stay in an offensive position while I'm trying to maneuver and gain the sword. Whereas if I actually cross their weapon, as I'm told to do in all of the text, Spanish as well, right? I'm not going to be pointing at my opponent, I'm going to be pointing across their sword. Now I've taken away any opportunity. My hand is in my belly, it's not in second, right, or outside, and it's not in fourth, because now what happens is I've turned to fourth. You can see her edge gets, even right there, her edge gets on top of my flap. And as I come forwards, it goes away. But if I put my sword up on top, and then she goes to the other side, I can follow it with my sword on top. This is terza gaining the outside. On top, and now my hand's a little bit in turn, but it's not fully into fourth yet. I'll go from here, transition to my attack, sending my sword forward, and then I can finish with the foot. What happens is now we have an actual cone of defense that looks like this, where the hand stays in the middle and the point goes outside. Kind of looks like this, right? The point goes wide and over, makes like a little cut, like in a Tahoe, right? Or just transitioning from terza quarta with my point going across the center. There, and I can do that with my feet. Even just using my back foot to point my sword. I can use my arm if I want to just make that. I can use my hips to do this transition. depending on where and when I need to be moving my sword, how aggressive I want to be. If I'm aggressive, I'm going to use a lot more arm because I want my feet going forwards. If I'm defensive, I'm going to use a lot more body because I want my body getting out of the way, right? So all of those contextual pieces are, we have two cones. The new cone of defense, which is pointed this way, and the cone of offense, formerly known as the cone of defense, pointed this way. And when we get to our attack, the first part of that attack is transitioning from the cone of defense into the cone of offense. And that flips our sword from having the hilt to the center and the point wide to the hilt to the wide and the point to the center, and then we can follow that space with our foot. Okay? All of these then work into a sequence of actions that are derived in measure. Because if I'm not in a measure to attack, which cone should I be using?
Defense.
Cone of defense, right? So if I'm out of measure to attack, and I've pointed at my opponent like a good Spaniard or Italian to say, stay the hell away, because if I don't do that first, if I just approach with my point off the line, they're going to take my sword. So starting from the center, my hand's in the center, and the first thing I'm going to do is cross the point at the very widest measure. I'm still not in attacking range yet, but I've taken away the first tempo, right? And maybe they're very patient, or they don't know what I'm doing and they let me take another step. So I'll take another step. You know, am I in my lunge measure yet? Getting closer, maybe I take a half a step, get to where I want to be, right? Then I make my transition, and then every step of the way, I'm watching for my opponent to do something else, right? Because they don't want to wait there. They're not going to wait there. What can they do to take this away from me? What happens? I go to gain the sword and they disengage, right? So I have to be watching at each stage of that measure for that opportunity. And then, very important, I have to stop what I'm doing and do something else, right? I can't finish the action. Even if that's kind of like a step. This is why our steps should be small. So now I take the point, right? And my opponent doesn't want to be there, they disengage. At that moment is when I have to move, right? So I have to abandon the so if I go to do it, I have to abandon that gain and move immediately to this side to gain the sword. I gotta know, am I in lunge measure yet? Should I attack? Now, I can move forwards a little bit. Oh, they moved again, okay. Dress. Right, now I'm in lunge measure. So what's my next action?
Transition.
Transition. Have they moved?
No.
No, but what if they did? Oh, they pushed. That happens a lot, right? What happens if my opponent pushes on my sword? What do I do?
Start over.
Just get out?
Not necessarily, but you have to abandon what you were doing.
Abandon what I'm doing
and change.
And change. What do I change? Where do I go?
Cone of defense.
I go to cone of defense. They're out.
Rod's it.
So at any given point, let's say I'm here, and my opponent pushes on the sword.
Yeah.
What should I do with my sword? Should I keep it over here?
No.
No? What should I do? Disengage. I want to disengage in the time of the push. Guess what happens when I do that? Oh, they fling further, and I'm now in this side. So even if at the very last minute, I start that transition, and now my opponent pushes, I'm still free to disengage my sword and finish on the other side.
Right.
Right? So I have that. You want to talk about provoking? This is the good German methodology. You want to talk about feinting? All of these things, or starting the attack. If I launch that foot, you're going to parry, right? Wait for my attack, right? And I launch that attack this way. Can't do nothing. Best I can do is try to kind of get something underneath as I go. But if I wait, holding my body back, now they've got to parry. Now I've got the option, right? And I don't want to wait. I want to make that transition and then there. As you can see, if they have reaction time, but even then, right? I start, there's the parry. I get over here, there's the parry, right? When do I move my foot? The very last minute becomes that action. And this doesn't really matter if I'm lunging or stepping, because all of this can be done, like, as an example from the Spaniard side, right? I would make an atajo. I can work my way in. I'm going to transition to the line across, and I can step with either foot, right? Just step into that space. It doesn't really matter if it's back foot or front foot, right? I'm transitioning, and then let's say you parry again, right? Wait, so I transition. There's the parry. Now I step into my new space, right? So this is about what do we want to do with gaining the sword. We want to control the tempo, but that means that we also have to be provoking our opponent to move it. We want them to move. I want you to disengage. That's the whole goal of me gaining your sword. I know you're going to have to, and I'm waiting for it. If they're not doing it, there's a couple of things you can do, but the first and most important thing you need to do is stay patient. Right? You need to stay patient. So if they're just baiting me, she knows I have to make a step to get there. She's just baiting me. I've got to wait for just something, anything. That's the tempo I'm going to use, right? Otherwise, if I start rushing in and I go, okay, they're waiting. Wait. Patience.
How long will that
Right. So she's waiting. She's waiting for me to step in, and I just make that step. Now I'm right? Even if I've got a good game, even if I've got a good constraint on the sword, and I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to step in, she pushes on my step, and it takes it away from me. So I've got to be patient in that moment. I've got to see my options, and maybe I just make half a step, because that's what I'm waiting for, right? Then they went, okay, now I can, right? And I can get into that space. If they're patient, you have to be patient. The hardest thing to do is hit an opponent who is standing still and who is lying in wait. You want them moving, but you need to know where and when they're going to move and be in control of that space. That make sense?
Yeah.
That is the main goal. When you're moving your sword, when you're going to gain a line, I know I've told you to point the sword. One of the habits that we have is pointing by using my wrist. And so what that does is actually pulls my wrist, you'll notice, to the outside of my body. And now I'm not actually protecting my inside line. I really want to use just sort of like my forearm and let the sword stay where it is. It's not turning at all. I'm not doing this. Right? The point of the cone is actually my body and not my hand. Right? The hand is kind of the point of the cone, but it's actually at my body where the cone is at the point. Is that a question?
I have a combined question for the two of you. Is this where the butt stuff comes in?
Is this where the butt stuff comes in?
It can involve butt stuff.
Okay,
It
thank you.
can involve butt stuff. Again, you can do this if I'm being aggressive, right, with this, like if my opponent has given me a line where they've pulled their point a little wide, right, and now I already have a nice clear path,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And I'm being aggressive, I'm going to use a lot more of my arm, and I'm going to aggress with my front foot to gain that point, right? If my opponent is being very defensive or maybe cagey and they don't want to give me a point, let's be like make a Spaniard, maybe a Spaniard, right? He's really behind his sword, right? Now, if I go to use my arm, no, really point at me. No, right there, relax. The point right now, you're drifting. Good. It's important, right? He's pointing at me, and I go to get that sword. It's really hard for me to get it without making some weird angle, which he's going to take advantage of as a Spaniard. Oh boy, that's not good for me, right? So maybe I'm going to use more of my shoulder, right, to get around that sword, and maybe I make a little rotation with my foot. So I'm pulling my sword a little bit more, maybe in an arc, to get there, but I'm also rotating that whole fight, right? Maybe he's trying to kind of gain counter posture on my sword, right? And I know that this is going to get in real trouble for me. I can use my hips to pull myself into a position where I'm in control of his point, right? So all the different joints of my body can be utilized in different fashions to create the leverage I want. I can also do this simply with sort of, okay, I'm going to step out here, right? So all these things, these are the, where's Paulo? These are the subtleties of gaining the sword, right? If I make a big motion to go gain his sword, and I come in from a wide guard, and I go, I'm going to get that sword. I'm giving him a big cue, and now he can make a fairly substantial motion in my time to take it away from me. But if I'm using a much smaller action of just putting my point, now I'm prepared for when that next tempo comes up. Right? So in each one of his tempos, I can move because I haven't made a big start to this. And then I get tinked, right? We've all had that happen. Because he's got the measure on you, and you went in aggressively to get his point with a big step and a big motion, and now you're out of position, right? So you're gonna have to use the smaller tempos and the smaller steps, and maybe I start with my shoulder, right? Sorry, and I can use my butt to get where I want to go and get into that space, right? So, okay, so that does that sort of answer the question in that terms? And all right, that was the other thing. The other big fail point is the big step and the big motion to try to go get that sword. Right now, because this is a drill and I've asked your partner to be a very good feeder and just present the sword, it's not going to make a difference. But it will later, right? When we start adding in context to the fight, my opponent gets to choose the tempo, their motion after this, right? So those are the two big things I wanted to talk to people about. Were there other places where people either struggled or had questions or even found something useful that maybe I haven't mentioned to people that they might find useful?
Don't take big steps.
In their actions. What's that?
Don't take big steps.
Big steps can, right? Big step. Yes and no. I'm going to say, like, again, context is key. There are times to make the big step. Mm-hmm. But when my opponent is lying in wait and I'm trying to gain their sword, that is not one of those times.
Yeah.
Okay?
Exactly.
Right. So, and I have a whole story about that later. What else? So big steps, be careful with big steps. We'll say that for now. Be careful with big steps. What else?
Leaning the head. I hadn't thought about that.
Like leaning out?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And especially when doing slow work, I feel like my head wants to overcompensate, especially when I'm moving slowly. My head wants to exaggerate the balancing.
Right.
But just being aware of that, I think not something I considered.
And it also has to do with the angle of the step, the lean too. Like even if I'm doing this, like I've seen this. This wasn't what you were doing. This was
Sure.
the kind of episode, but I've seen this just as a demonstrational purpose. Or I've gained the sword, and then I turn to fourth and I kind of lean out to get away from his sword. And now when I lean, I get over here and I just gave him all that leverage that I worked so hard to get
Yeah.
just went right away.
Yeah, no,
or
I
even
definitely
if I
do that.
step, and we talked about this one, right? I get that good leverage and then I step in this way. I've given him back all that leverage. When I get the leverage, I want to get into that weapon. And I want my whole body and my structure in that space so that I'm in control of that space there. So I'm lunging towards the cars, right? I'm not even looking at him. That doesn't matter to me at all. I just need to know where his sword is. And it's right there. And my structure is formed that this is the point of contact, not over there.
Right.
So if I lean it all in that, I give it away. Right? So being structurally sound in that moment is critical. That's the goal. It's where the Spaniards just standing upright, and I take that line and I just step that way. Right?
Right.
That's why I love this, because I haven't leaned and given away leverage in a weird way. The more you, there's something to be said about fighting from avoidance and dodging, and even Agrippa, right? You can do this. Let's say he's gained the line on me. Great. I can put myself out of the way of his sword. I can lean my head over here, and I can hit him. But like, I'm not trying to get leverage in that moment.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
I'm trying
right.
to create absence of space.
Mhm.
That's the time to lean.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? When we have control, we don't want to give it away inadvertently by giving that leverage up.
Yeah.
Right? Cool. All right. If people want to do more, no, this is a lot. But what we can do is, what I really love to do is have you gain the point, and then your feeder gets to choose one of two things. They can either disengage, no, just disengage. They can disengage to free their sword, or they can push on the blade, right? To get it out of the way. Because this happens how many times? You go to gain their sword and then they disengage, or they push, whatever, doesn't matter, right? This is where we want to be in control of that first tempo of, okay, I've gained that point, what do I do next? I'm provoking them to do something. I want them to do something, and I'm waiting for it. And then I'm going to spring to gain the sword on the other side, hopefully close a little distance if I'm really in control. If I'm not quite in control, I don't have to move forwards at all, right? Okay, well, I'm still not sure. Be more tink. He's going to be a really advanced fencer, right? And now I'm not quite sure if he's going to give me a tempo or not, right? So maybe I don't advance. I'm just staying defensive, but controlling the space, right? I'm getting, oh, there it is. You see the little hip there. And now I've got it, right? Now I've got it. Now I can go forwards, right? So you don't have to go forwards with every step, but that's our key to getting forwards, is having that tempo. If they don't give us a tempo, he's just going to be, I'll do it. So Tink's going to come and gain my sword, and I'm just going to be here, just maintaining that measure and not giving him anything. If he steps out of tempo, or if I'm just waiting and he comes at me, like, I'll just take it away from him, right? And sometimes that's a game you have to play, right? But we don't want to get played that way, right? We want to be the one playing it. Yeah.
Definitely just the restructuring of weapon components events actually is really helpful to me, because, as I was saying, I was having a lot of problems gaining the blade and just doubling out or getting stabbed or whatever. And I would say, okay, let's fall back to my fundamentals, let's go back to the scratch, let's go to the total defense. Why is this defense?
Right. Because you're trying to do it while you're gaining the sword,
Yep.
and that's
Yep.
the wrong
And
time to be
losing
using
all my
that.
leverage.
Yeah. Yes, excellent. Yeah, that's why I've been reframing cone of defense, cone of
Yeah.
offense. It occurred to, that was one of my big transitions this year. So
You're
that's
telling
my
me.
new meta. Yeah.
Pizza, French fry.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, pizza French fry.
French
Yeah,
fry.
however you want to think about it.
It's like
It's the skiing.
it's the ski.
metaphor,
It's
yeah.
ski.
Yes.
You
Okay,
know, they teach
okay.
kids when
Okay.
they're
Yeah,
Gotcha.
pizza versus
Yeah.
French fries.
Yeah, right.
Right.
To the French fries.
Yeah.
Pizza is when you should have
That-
French fries.
So where does the pineapple
I
go
am
in?
so using that the next person's going to
I've tried to-
because you didn't pizza, you French fries.
Trying to teach Flores upward, up, like low Satani as shoveling snow, and down in this crowd it doesn't work. What's
Like,
all that?
yeah.
What else?
sense, yeah.
So that's really good. Yeah.
The more, but having a
Yeah, you know, that's why I don't
distinct transition from defending to attacking.
Yeah.
My brain's liking it.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. And it comes along with not having to touch the sword. Everybody tells you don't have to touch the sword, but then we always end up touching the sword, right?
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things I want that I want to cover with that, and it goes along with the other thing, which has a little bit to do with being tall or not. Any other questions? Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, the thing that you had mentioned about the stepping not straight line towards your opponent, because I feel like so often in so many circumstances I'm lunging straight forward and I'm losing control of their blade and it turns into a speed duel.
It's so instinctive, and there's so many people that basically fence from a speed duel where that works, right? 'Cause
Well,
is the
I win those a lot,
straightest-
but
that is the straightest, longest line to my opponent is there. But the problem with that line is that it doesn't have an angle, therefore it doesn't defend me, right?
Yeah.
And so if I'm not in control of the sword, I got to be doing something else to defend myself in some fashion, right? But yes, that is the quickest way there, but it isn't always the best, right? Anything else? See a lot. Everybody's brains are doing so good. So I'll wrap up this little bit. There's two things. One is about kind of the pushing of the sword. Actually, and this is about that the pushing in the moment of transition, and that it's like if I'm leaning my sword on my opponent's weapon, even just a little bit, this slows down my reaction time to when he goes to disengage. See how my sword fell? And I didn't lie, I don't want that, right? So being subtle in this, where I'm touching my opponent's sword, but I'm not pushing on it. Why am I touching it? Because he's in the center, right? I have to, I can't, people always say don't touch the sword, so they avoid it like this, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm not actually gaining the line, right? We did all the things with the wrist I said not to do. So yes, oftentimes against a fencer who has their sword forward, you're going to have to push it out of the way, but you don't want to push. You want to stabilize yourself and claim that spot, right? So I'm just putting my sword where it needs to be, and if he moves his sword, I don't fall. This comes from your back, it comes from your core. Don't rely on your arm to do it, because the instant I start relying on my arm to hold my sword, my point starts to fall. Your back, and your core, and your hips have to be able to hold the sword in that space without pushing. The other thing that happens if I push, beyond that is you're going to be a feeder, right? And then I let my sword kind of push in on his, and then I go to rotate it, and the sword isn't there for me to catch because I have pushed it down. I did it to myself, right? If I'm holding my sword up and I'm gaining that space and I'm just crossing that line, this point stays right there.
The sword is so gentle.
I'm just, right? He can't feel me,
I come off,
right? The instant I let my sword sink into my shoulder, everything falls down. And if you're feeling tightness here, that's probably what you're doing. So think about really opening up that back and getting your arms under the sword to carry it. So you're carrying your sword, you're not letting it fall. Okay? This goes along with us. This is very important for short fighters. Okay? Because as a short fighter fighting a taller fighter, especially one who knows how to use the center, when I go to gain that sword, it's above mine. So if I lift my sword to get above it so that I'm not touching it. Now I've violated everything, right? And it's no good, and I get tight up here, and I'm like, or I do something, I'm like chasing up with my hilt. All these things that I can do poorly because they're already in the advantageous leverage position. Whereas if Tink comes to gain my sword and I'm in my nice guard, very easy for him, much harder for me. But if I'm really stable and I understand the leverage of swords, I can get his point just fine without doing anything other than crossing it. So I'm here, my hand's lower than his. I'm gonna lift my point just a little bit to get it over his point. If I'm trying to do this, yeah, that's a lot of motion. But just my point, and I lift it up, and now as I come forward, watch what happens to his shoulder. He sinks. He gives me that space that I want. I can actually pull his shoulder out of the position he wants it to be in by gaining his sword and bring him down to my level. And I will say this, my opinion as a short fighter, the worst thing you can do as a tall fighter is try to lower your sword to get to me, right? The worst thing Tink can do is pull that sword down and start fighting me down here. That's exactly what I want, because now I've got his shoulder. It's out of position. He keeps that shoulder in position, right? At that height, now when I come over, much easier for him to defend, right? So I got to be very careful with my leverage. And we talked about this, aiming at the chin, too. So now I'm fighting a diagonal fight. I'm still gaining his sword, but when I'm attacking to the head. The minute I drop this point, I give him the leverage, right? But it's a diagonal, just a nice, smooth diagonal, keeps me safe, right? So those are sort of wrap-up nuggets for subtle gaining the sword. Be prepared that your opponent is going to do it on purpose. Be ready for it. Small motions make big differences. Right? You don't have to get close fast. You can work your way there. You can let them come to you. That way you're in the right moment. You're stable and ready to move. That make sense? Any last questions before we wrap up? Then you guys go hit each other. Thank you. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good work. Everybody do